Hi everyone, we are Izzy, and Lizzie, and we put a presentation together on sustainable indigenous practices in the Amazon and the Arctic and what we can learn from them. So we've chosen to look at the Yanomami tribe in the Amazon rainforest and the Inuit tribes in the Arctic.
The Yanomami are an indigenous group in the Amazon rainforest across Venezuela and Brazil. They are made up of 38,000 people across 250 villages, making them one of the largest forested indigenous territories in the world. Here is a close-up section of the map. As you can see, their territory covers a large part of the border between Brazil and Venezuela. Unlike with much exploitation of the forest, the Yanomami only take from the forest what they need to survive. One result of this is that they only take around 4 hours of work each day to satisfy all their material needs, leaving much time for sharing gathered food amongst family and friends. What is most fundamentally different from much rainforest exploitation is their respect for the forest, that when an area shows a sign of exhaustion, for example through reduced game, they move on to allow it to recover before potentially returning in the future. This means that the impact they make on the forest is always very conscious and rarely reaches a state where it makes permanent imprints on the ecosystem. This is the same for their farming. Although they grow around 60 different crops within the rainforest ecosystem, including papaya and bananas, they move locations every 5 or so years, allowing recovery of the ecosystem before it reaches its limits. Finally, and this one is probably the most important for us to learn and benefit from, is the Yanomami deep knowledge and understanding of their forest and the complex relationships between animals and plants within the ecosystem, gained from personal experience as well as thousands of years' experience beforehand. Yanomami demonstrate this throughout their lifestyle, from their use of 500 different species of plant on a daily basis, or through use of fibrous wood species for creating baskets, to the recognition that it is time to move on from an area. In this way, the idea of destroying their environment is unthinkable. They are acutely attuned to changes and functionings of the ecosystem. Most of these may not be applicable to our life in the Western world outside the rainforest, but Indigenous knowledge should be at the centre of plans made for the Amazon rainforest, and this applies to any ecosystem and its local experts. An example of how this could be used is through Indigenous knowledge guiding the selection of the best species for replanting and restoration of the forest. Finally, the best way we can reflect their care and connection to the environment in our daily lives is by becoming as connected as we can with our local environment, and perhaps lockdown helped with this when we were forced to see the same environment every day.
Historically, the Inuit people lived entirely off the sea and land, but in modern times are forced to adapt with the contemporary world due to both legislation imposed on their hunting practices by governments as well as by the impacts of industrialization and climate change. Increased contact with the rest of the world throughout the 20th century means that many are now employed in paid work in order to earn money for electricity and other modern comforts such as medicines. However, some also continue to follow the traditions, which gives them a strong sense of community. The Inuit use kayaks to hunt on the sea, but they also hunt on land. They take only what they need to survive and use all parts of the animals rather than hunting for sport. This includes a wide variety of things from eating meat to making houses. By using everything available to them, the Inuit limit their waste and negative impacts on their environment. Additionally, they hunt animals only when they're in season and have a great knowledge and understanding of the interdependent and interrelated elements of their environment, as well as the changing resources throughout the year, which allows them to use them more effectively without overexploiting. From this, we could take away the idea of increased education about our environments as well as locally sourced resources. Government policies in the countries in which the Inuit reside allow different regulations for them so that traditional ways of life can continue due to the small scale at which their hunting practices take place. The Inuit are also involved in the International Circumpolar Council, or ICC, the members of which can be seen in the map on the right. It is an NGO recognised by the United Nations which helps to make Indigenous peoples' opinions heard so that they can promote their rights, but also input their greater knowledge of the land and ecosystems to improve conservation and local management strategies. In this way, the world as a whole can benefit from their deep knowledge so long as we respect it and are willing to follow and understand. Already in the Arctic, the effects of climate change have greatly influenced the Inuit ways of life, as have modernisation and increased contact with the rest of the world, which continued throughout the 20th century, leading to a lesser reliance on traditional practices. However, these continue to be followed by many and are successful because of their understanding of the connectedness and interdependency around their homes. Whilst it would be impossible for us to follow some of their practices, we can take away the importance of using locally sourced resources and not wasting them. We could also work with indigenous populations all over the world to increase the effectiveness of conservation strategies because of their greater understanding of deep knowledge of the areas they live in. Increased education, especially from a young age, about how to work in and respect our environment could also be beneficial.
Arguably, the most important thing we can learn from these Indigenous groups is just how connected and aware they are of their local environment and ecosystem. This awareness and respect is something that could hopefully be transferred into our own lives, which is key to countering human-induced degradation and provides us with the understanding to help us manage and adapt to our changing climate in the future. Our research is obviously limited as we only looked at two groups in two very different parts of the world that require different adaptations in order to live sustainably. There are around 370 million Indigenous people in more than 90 countries across the world, with a diverse range of cultures and practices, so we cannot look at all of them together, but perhaps if we did more research, we could draw up parallels between them, which we could implement on a societal basis. Indigenous knowledge will be key as we continue to confront climate change, and hopefully they will be acknowledged as key players on a wider scale.